Welcome to Grow Law Firm Podcast. I have a great guest with me here today, Mike Alder of AlderLaw out of LA. Mike, my team, when they prep me for these podcast episodes, they give me notes. They underlined one word, successful. They looked at you from different angles of life, and you are really what so many others aspire to be. You're successful. Your PI firm did something like $2.5 billion in less than 23 years, which is unusual for a relatively small PI law firm. You're married to your business partner. You have 4 kids. You're healthy. You're working out like crazy. You got a ranch. You got it all. And you had a very close relationship with your dad, I understand, who was a minister. What are the guiding principles? What did you learn from your dad that led you to such a successful life?
Well, more important than the 2.5 billion, you left out 2 other kids. I've got 6 between me and my wife.
You got
So,
6 kids. All right. I did not know. They told me 4.
so I had coffee with my daughter who just started UCLA and then went home and fed the 6-month-old baby a bottle. So, it's a full circle thing.
Mhm.
But I'm sorry, what was the question again?
So the question was, I understand that you were very close with your dad.
Yeah.
And I asked you, what are the 3 guiding principles that he may have taught you early on that led you to leading such a successful life yourself?
Well, he taught them to me, but I don't know that I would say he taught them early on. Well, he did teach them early on. I just didn't realize it until later, right? And I think like many of us, our parents got smarter the older we got, right? And certainly that was the situation with me. But, growing up with a teacher and a preacher for a father and a mother, in the South, I learned do unto others as you would have done to yourself, right? I learned that giving is the highest form of living. And I just kind of didn't know that that was not the way to live. So when I moved to LA, that was just part of my DNA. And, the 2 of the mottos that I kind of started with was to give and you receive back 1,000-fold, right? But I changed that to give unconditionally. Give unconditionally, you will receive back 1,000-fold. And the reason I did that was it's like, half the people give money to people on the street. The other half don't. The half that don't say they're just going to take the money and go buy drugs or booze or whatever, right? And I realized that if I was giving money only to people that I knew I would use it in the way I wanted them to use it, that condition, I'd do it less times. And so I added that unconditional giving, and I actually talked to my dad about it right before he passed away a couple of years ago, of COVID, actually. And he said, yeah, unconditional is the way to give more, because whether they take advantage of you or not, if they do what you want them to do or not, it's not about that, it's about helping. And then the other motto that I have is, in victory be gracious, right? I'm sorry, in victory be humble, and in defeat be gracious. And those 2 guiding principles have served anybody well, and it certainly served me well.
Mm. It's very interesting. I am rereading the book called Principles by Ray Dalio,
The
who's
best.
a great self-made multi-billionaire, very successful guy by any stretch of imagination. And the part where I left off the book last night, he talks about strategic giving. He is actually very, very strategic about the way he gives away his billions.
Yeah.
And he says that it feels like a full-time job to figure out how to give right. People who have built significant wealth actually have hard time distributing that wealth should they choose to, like Bill Gates of the world and Warren Buffett's and Ray Dalio. He said it's hard. You always want to help more than your resources allow, despite the fact that he's worth $17 billion or something like that.
Yep.
And he, just as Warren Buffett and Gates and so many others, have decided to leave very little for their relatives,
Yeah.
their kids, spouses, etc., and give it all away. They said it's quite a challenging task to do so. Have you run into that issue, or do you just give unconditionally?
Well, my wife Gina and I have actually talked about that because we do a lot of community-based giving and volunteering. I'm on the YMCA board. I was first on Metro, then I actually resigned to go to a smaller part of the Metro, East LA, because I wanted to be on the ground. And we were just at the downtown Los Angeles Mission. More Gina than me. I went with her speaking to kids who came across the border with one adult, have no home, and they're sheltered. And you're like, what do you need? How can we help? And they need everything, right? Interesting. They said, we just need bottled water. We don't have enough water. I'm like, ugh. So what do you do with that, right? You're like, it's an unending open pit of need that you could shovel in everything you have. And we both are very much, we're not going to help everybody, but we can help somebody. And so we don't look at there's a million people hungry. If we can't feed a million people, then let's not do it. There's a million people hungry, and we feed as many as we can, and do your best. And you encourage other people to do it too, and post about it and put it on social media, not with a shaming or whatever, but come join us, bring your children, teach them about this, and you live. You just, otherwise you're miserable, right? If you're only happy when everybody has no problem, you're miserable. So you do what you can. And you are grateful for what you have and the blessings you have. Don't ever get ahead of yourself. We all do. Mike, what's it like to have no ego? I'm like, I have no idea. I think I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, right? But you do have to take a step back and realize that there's always somebody bigger, better, stronger, richer, good, better looking, better speaker, faster, that. So you just take a step back, do what you can, help somebody, and do it again and again and again.
Can you connect the dots? How being charitable helped you succeed?
I'm a big believer in karma. I'm a big believer in the universe. And, I'm spiritual. I grew up as a, preacher's kid. So ultimately I came back to that. But I believe that if you want money, you give money away. If you want respect, I know people say you earn respect. You do, but you're not going to get respect unless you give respect. If you want love, you got to give love. And I believe that giving is the best way to get back things. And I've never been disappointed, never been regretful of helping or giving. And, in a business standpoint, I could name certainly once a month, maybe even once a week, somebody calls me and says, you don't know me, you helped me do something that 10 years ago, I'd always wanted to work with you. And again, it's unconditional, right? I'm like, I will help you no matter what happens in the future, but it happens, right? And, so that just allows me to keep going, keep helping. But there's no downside. Thanking someone, being pleasant, really appreciating someone, writing them a personal note, thanking them, helping them in whatever way you can without looking over their shoulder as to who's the next person that you can step on them to get to the next person. Would you appreciate that if I legitimately cared about you and helped you and not said, hey, let me look over your shoulder and see if there's somebody more important that I can talk to. Everybody responds to that. That happened to me the other night. I was at a party and Gina and I left, and I said, did you feel like, people were just talking to you to try to get to the next higher up rung? And she's like, yeah, they kept looking. So we left.
So in a way, they punish themselves.
I'm sorry?
Because in a way, they punish themselves because they're missing out.
Right. But at the same time, it was great because it tells you exactly what kind of person they are. And we realized, hey, thanks for doing that up front. So we didn't have to spend 30 minutes figuring out that we didn't want to be with you. Right.
It's interesting. This is the most spiritual conversation I've had on this podcast, and I've been doing this for over a year, week in and week out. I think this is probably episode 60 something. And I've never had a spiritual conversation like this one. Mm-hmm. Also, what you said reminded me of a story, and I'm going to paraphrase it. Evan, because I don't remember it word for word by a long shot. There was a woman, and I believe the story takes place during World War II, and her husband was fighting on the Eastern Front, and I believe his division, not battalion, division, over a course of a year, was decimated completely. Her husband was the only one who survived. Went through the whole war, came back home in one piece. No limbs missing, nothing. And somebody asked her, why do you think he is the only one who lived? Looking for something. Like, hey, was he hiding in the bushes? Did he do something to do this? And she said, I prayed that all the people who shot at him would come home alive. So when you talk about karma, the universe, everything being connected, it's kind of sort of like that.
Yeah.
She did it unconditionally, and she prayed for the enemy instead of praying for her husband. I'm not a scholar on Bible, Old Testament or New Testament, but I was listening to Jocko podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with that guy or not.
Yeah, the Navy SEAL.
Yeah, the Navy SEAL. He is one of the most recent episodes. He had a scientist who is also a devout Catholic. And he talked about one of Jesus' teachings, which was love thy enemy, which is, according to that guy, the ultimate way of taking control over any situation, no matter what kind of adversity you're facing. Mm-hmm. Love thy enemy. That woman in that story, she embodied it. She did that. And it is possible because karma and universe and everything being connected. Her husband was the only one from that division who came home. So I'm a huge believer in charity giving. My friends, my very close friends, who guys I've been friends with for over a quarter of a century, piss me off regularly because they don't. So I push them. And sometimes they do because I push them. But it's interesting. You say that half give and half don't. I have a suspicion that it's a lot less than half that do. And a lot more than half that don't.
And it's interesting. I have become, I'm a hardcore litigant. I'm a trial lawyer, right? I have the thirst for blood of cross-examination. It's like gets my juices flowing. And my wife, I don't know if you've watched some of my wife Gina's stuff, but she's a killer, right? That woman. I ain't going up against her, and she's one of those. As giving and as wonderful as she is, she's like, hey, they're not going to use it to go get food. They're going to go get booze or whatever. And I say, so I'd rather have 4 people go out and buy booze and 6 people go out to buy food and give it to 10 people. And she understands that, but she also understands that, if you put conditions on it. And so maybe she doesn't give to people that in that situation where I would, but at the same time, she would go above and beyond on something that I don't, you know. So it is different strokes for different folks. I get that. And, you know, when I have people say, well, don't give them money because they're going to buy booze, I'm like, well, then give them food. So have you ever brought home leftovers and handed them to somebody on the side? I mean, you know, there's just a lot of different ways. And I'm hesitating because this isn't about preaching and it's not about shaming or you should do whatever. I mean, do what works for you. But I got to say, in my personal opinion, every time I've ever volunteered and every person that I have posted and somebody's come down and volunteered, without question, I said, this was one of the best things I've ever done and I should do it more. And then I say, well, shoulds and woulds and coulds and tries don't mean shit, but I get it. And next time, bring your kids. We've brought our children, and it's been a wonderful experience for them too. You know, it's great perspective.
It's very interesting that you brought up kids into this. And Dalio, he talks about doing charitable work and donating money as a family activity.
Yeah.
Every one of his now 3 kids. I know one of them passed away a couple of years ago, but his 3 kids and his wife, they do it as a family activity. They plan their charities and how they're going to donate and where they're going to contribute. So they take it very, very seriously. So
Yeah.
one idea that you did give me, I donate quite a bit financially, but I do not volunteer. And one common thread among many financial and otherwise successful people is that in addition to financial contributions, they actually volunteer their time and their skills. And what I do know, I haven't done that, so I'm definitely going to put that on my to-do list for 2024. We're recording this at the very end of 2023, is to actually volunteer. One thing that I do know that a lot of successful people will band together. They go to the same places and they will volunteer together. So if you do not do that, one of the ways to meet people who are just like you, successful, striving, wanting to help others, connect with those people is through volunteering.
And you know, there's the Volunteers of America. I think it may even be like volunteer.org. Just go on the website and there are volunteer opportunities in whatever area that you're interested in, right? If you do Habitat for Humanity, if you want to do food banks, and it's interesting. I mean, you can even get on a email list, and there's a lot of opportunities. It's not impossible to find. And once you start looking and you start actually devoting some effort to learning about it, you'll find. Hell, follow me, and I'll post about come down and join me if you're in the LA area or in Louisiana when I'm here. I mean, I'd love to show you around.
What's your handle on Instagram? I know that you do a lot of work
So,
on Instagram.
Mike.Alder, Mike.Alder, and my YouTube channel is Alder, ALDER Talk, Alder Talk. I mean, I have a firm one as well, but if you go to Mike.Alder and Alder Talk, you'll get pretty much everything.
Yep.
And reach out. Happy to help anybody out there or to connect people.
Yeah. There's another point. There's another benefit to being charitable and donating money and time and effort and skills, and that is, in general, it will make you happy to help others, happier than almost anything else. And it's very easy to do. Every major religion teaches to donate 10%. If you have 10% that you can give away, great. If you can't, even donating $20, that's a contribution that you didn't have to do, but by just volunteering to give up that money will make you feel good. Guaranteed.
We tell people a lot. You want to be happy. You want to get out of a bad mood. Help somebody
else.
And or smile and sit up straight. That's voodoo. You're like a yogi, whatever. I'm like, try it. Yeah. Try to be unhappy if you sit up straight and smile for 30 seconds. Just try it. Hey, Mike, that worked pretty well. I'm like, I get it. I know I ain't dumb.
It's easy things that can really help you out, no matter what you're going through. Absolutely. Practicing gratitude every morning, whether you're a religious person or not, saying thank you and putting a smile on your face, even if it's a difficult day, even if it's a difficult year or a decade, will still help you out get through the day easier than otherwise.
I completely agree. And I know you have people watching that are not lawyers. You have all different kinds of business and whatever. And I talk about that on my Instagram and YouTube channel. It's not just legal based because I realize the things you're talking about, the stuff that I'm talking about, that consistent routine, how to create repetitive things that help you be more efficient, use less mental willpower to accomplish more and keeping in a mindset that is positive is a universal thing for any business, any person. And, juxtapose that against the 90 to 95% of people that start and never and stop, right? Who aren't that. And so I tell people in any business, you build these habits, you build this consistent behavior, you build the proper mindset, you take care of your body, your mind, your health, and you go through those routines. You don't have to compete with everybody in your industry. You just have to compete with the 5 to 10% in your industry that will do it like you do consistently. Because over time, people flash up and down. They market and they go away. All this stuff. The people that you see that you say, oh my God, they're killing it. 9 out of 10 of those people are gone in 6 months, a year, and people don't understand that, right? Because it's not flashy and sexy and whatever, but, ask Ray Dalio, right? He didn't make all of his money in, inventing one thing, and a year later he's worth $17 billion. I mean, he, like everybody who doesn't hit the lottery, they all have very similar things in common.
It took him about 30 years to hit the lottery. 3 decades,
Yeah.
give or take.
Right. I forget I forget how that goes. I've worked all my life to be an overnight success.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So he was successful in his own league, but it was not until 2008 when a lot of his financial predictions came true. Then he became really successful.
Yeah.
Then he just went through the stratosphere. But before that, he was successful, just not wildly successful. So 3 decades of very consistent effort and then an overnight success. If you don't mind sharing, what are your success habits every day? What is it that you do consistently, 365 days a year?
Well, I don't do it 365 because there's sometimes when I got a 6-month-old that it changes. But I have written routines that I follow. Under a usual case scenario, I get up at 4 a.m. I have already set out water that I start drinking a gallon of a day. I've set out my workout clothes. I weigh myself so that I take a cold shower first thing, have a cup of coffee, and then depending on if the baby's up, but if it's a normal, I have whatever I do. I will work out for 45 minutes. I will journal. I will meditate. I will do a focus practice for 10 to 15 minutes where I concentrate on something pretty beautiful, a bouquet of flowers or an artwork. Push out my thoughts, continue to come back to exercise my mind. So I've exercised body and mind. I'm learning Spanish, so I go to Duolingo. I have chickens and goats at both Los Angeles and Louisiana, so I take care of them. And by 6 o'clock, I have accomplished quite a bit. I watch a YouTube video on something that I'm interested in every day. So now I've learned a lot about ChatGPT. I listen to a fiction book. I listen to something in the legal thing, and I I usually do that every day. Sometimes, I'm in trial or whatever, it takes over. But the point is, I write it down, I do it. It takes about a month and a half to 2 months for it to become a habit. And the reason I make it a habit is so I don't have to think as much about doing it, right? That first cold shower, I was exhausted by the time I convinced myself to get out. Oh, this bed is warm. I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, it doesn't work. I'm like, shit, get in the damn shower. Now it's not even on my radar. And I use the example of the first time you went to school or to work you're looking at your phone and you're stressing. The 100th time, you still did the same thing. It's not even a thought, right? And so being able to do things that reduce the amount of mental time gives you that mental time to do other things in your day. And so you become more efficient. And then I'm a big proponent of choosing my suffering, right? I choose to suffer. I choose to push. I choose to experience, not in a sadomasochistic way, but pain, right? I figure out ways to push myself because I know that there's going to be unchosen suffering times when I'm gonna suffer, and I teach myself that I can survive. I can teach myself and I don't want to overstate that, right? I'm not like putting nails in my arm or anything, but so I ran a marathon because I said I couldn't run a marathon, and I said that to my girls, and I'm like, you know what, girls, I can do anything that I want. And so, that was not a fun experience for me, but I did it. Now I'm on a 75 hard kick. Now then I did a disc kick. You got to balance being kind of a nut job, but also not being a nut job, right? But I realize it's regimented. How you do anything is how you do everything. Right? So I make my bed. Why do I make my bed? Because, I teach at a law school, and some of the students ask me, how do you be a great trial lawyer? And I said, make your bed every morning, take a cold shower. And they're like, what? And I said, that discipline every day translates in every way about your life. And if you're not going to be able to do that, you're not going to stay up and study and cram and learn and fight the way you need to fight. And so, these are all universal things.
But as Jim Rohn famously said, what's easy to do is even easier not to do.
Yeah.
So most people wouldn't. Let me ask you this. You do all of these things. How much time do you have to spend with your children?
A lot. And I love it. I take my kids to school with my wife whenever possible, unless there is a catastrophic event that prevents me. I'm out of town with trials or whatever. I make sure we do that. But see, that's another thing that I'm a whole mindset change away. I have plenty of time to do whatever I want. And if you just calculate the time, there's 168 hours in a week. I sleep 7 hours, usually 7 to 8. Let's say you sleep 8 hours a night, 7. And let's say you work 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday. Doing that, after sleeping and eating, sleeping and working, you still got 9 to 9.5 hours a day. Oh, well, okay, I got to commute. Well, my commute's not that long, but let's say you had an hour commute. I got to eat. Okay. Another hour and a half to eat. You still got 7.5 hours in a day. Oh, I got to get dressed. I got to go to the bathroom. Okay. 6 hours, 5 hours. Where does that 5 hours a day go? Right? Well, that's where you phone and your TV and whatever. So if I schedule time with my kids of an hour or two, I got plenty of time. If I don't schedule it and I fit it in when I have nothing else to do, then it's much more difficult to do that. And again, once it becomes a habit, right? I've made a commitment, and I did not do this with my older kids, and we all have paid that price, and I'm making up for that, but I don't think anybody out here is probably alone in that, right? But I've learned. And so I'm like, I'm spending time with my kids as much as I can until otherwise. And it's interesting. My competitors have actually tried to say that means I'm taking my eye off the ball, and thus Mike's distracted, so come with me and whatever. I mean, I get that, but to say that makes me a better person and a stronger, better advocate in every way and more in touch with reality is the biggest understatement of the world. And spending time with your family and your children does not make you weak. It makes you strong. And if you don't believe that, then I probably don't want to talk to your ass.
This has been a very, very insightful conversation. Probably this podcast, I usually talk about business through and through.
This is about business.
This is about business, but from a very different angle. Very different angle. I often hear from people that I don't have time for this or that. I often hear from people that, hey, I gotta buy a house next year, so I'm not going to donate to charity until I buy the house, and then I buy the furniture, and then I buy a new car, and then I buy. So
never stop.
You always hear excuses, right? Yet here you are, very successful law business, not a practice, but a law business. You have generated so much result for your clients and for your law firm. It's a business. It's not a practice. Family, 6 kids. Here you are getting up at 4 o'clock every morning, cold shower, meditation, workout, all of those things. And you have time to spend with your kids almost every night unless you're and you have your home in LA, and you have your ranch in Louisiana, I believe. All of these things. And you have time that you donate to others, and you're successful enough to donate funds to others. Like when you listen to this, if you ever think that you don't have the time or other resources to do more, you got to take a really hard look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, how have I been bullshitting myself for the last X number of years or decades, probably?
And I'm happy if anybody sees this and is saying, well, I can't do it. Reach out. I'm happy to spend time and show you because, we're all blessed with a wonderful life that's very long, but also very short. So I'm happy to help whoever figure out how you can find the time to do pretty much anything you want.
You're definitely making the most of it. Mike, congrats on your success.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. This has been nice. It's great for me to talk about this stuff because it reinforces it for me. So I appreciate the question.
Same for me. And some of the things that you said, I don't do them. It's a great reminder to start. So I really appreciate you now.
All right.
Really do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.